Daniel Thompson's Christmas display was legendary. For years, his yard transformed into a winter wonderland that brought joy to the entire neighborhood. Children's faces would light up as they marveled at the twinkling lights, dancing reindeer, and Santa's workshop, complete with animated elves. It was a tradition, one that Daniel cherished, a tribute to the magical Christmases his late parents once created. But this year, the magic was shattered. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association slapped him with a $500 fine, calling his display excessive and disruptive. It wasn't just about rules, it was about control. At the heart of it was Karen Whitaker, the HOA president with a reputation for ruthless authority. She stood on his doorstep, a smug smile on her face, and coldly declared, "Take them down, or face the consequences." Her voice was icy, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Daniel's hands trembled as he looked at the notice. It wasn't just an attack on his decorations. It was an attack on his memories, his family, and his love for Christmas. But Karen didn't care. She was confident in her power, certain that her influence could crush his spirit. She underestimated him. Because Daniel wasn't just another homeowner bowing to her tyranny. He had something Karen never expected, a community that believed in him, a fire that couldn't be extinguished, and a loophole buried deep in the HOA's own rulebook. And when Karen finally realized who she was up against, it was already too late. She never saw it coming. But let's start from the beginning. Daniel Thompson had always loved Christmas. Every December, his modest house at the end of Maple Lane transformed into a magical wonderland. Strings of colorful lights danced along the roof, inflatable snowmen waved cheerfully, and his iconic Santa's workshop, complete with animatronic elves, brought joy to the neighborhood. Children's faces lit up with awe, and families made special trips just to see his display. It wasn't just about decorations. It was about preserving the spirit of Christmas and honoring the memories of his parents, who had always made the holidays magical. But this year, his holiday joy shattered with the arrival of a letter. The envelope bore the cold, formal seal of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Daniel's heart sank as he tore it open, his eyes widening at the words, "Notice of violation. Excessive lawn decorations. Fine, $500. Immediate removal required." His hands trembled as he read on. "Your holiday display violates community guidelines for aesthetic uniformity. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in additional fines." His blood boiled. It was signed by Karen Whitaker, the iron-fisted president of the HOA, known for her obsessive control over the neighborhood. Of course, it was her. Daniel had heard stories of her unreasonable fines and rigid enforcement of arbitrary rules, but this was personal. She had never approved of his festive display, claiming it disrupted the neighborhood's harmony. Anger surged through him. How dare she ruin his Christmas tradition? Determined to confront her, Daniel stormed across the street. Karen's house was immaculate. Every wreath perfectly symmetrical, every light bulb strategically placed. It was beautiful, yes, but soulless, lacking the warmth and joy that made Christmas special. He rang the doorbell, his jaw clenched. The door swung open, and Karen appeared, her face plastered with a fake smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Oh, hello, Daniel. I was just thinking about you," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with condescension. Daniel didn't bother with pleasantries. He held up the letter. "What's the meaning of this?" Karen's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Ah, the violation notice. I'm afraid your display is a bit excessive. We strive for a cohesive aesthetic here at Willow Creek. Your decorations are a distraction and don't fit our community's standards." Daniel's voice shook with frustration. "Are you serious? People love my display. It's a tradition that brings joy to the neighborhood." Her smile tightened, her tone dripping with feigned sympathy. "Rules are rules, Daniel. Nostalgia doesn't exempt you from compliance. Besides, not everyone enjoys the noise and traffic your display attracts. Some people appreciate peace and quiet. Daniel's fists clenched, his nails digging into his palms. He saw it clearly now. This wasn't about rules or aesthetics. It was about control. Karen couldn't stand his house being the center of attention, overshadowing her perfectly curated display. She wanted to snuff out his Christmas spirit simply because it dared to shine brighter than hers. He stood his ground, his voice steady and defiant. "You're just upset because people actually enjoy my decorations. This isn't about rules. It's about you wanting everything to be your way." For a brief moment, Karen's mask slipped, her face flushing with anger before she regained her icy composure. "Watch yourself, Daniel. I'd hate for this to escalate. Take them down, or face the consequences." Her voice was low and threatening, her eyes burning with cold malice as she shut the door in his face. Daniel stood there, his heart pounding, his body tense with anger and indignation. How could someone be so heartless? All he wanted was to bring a little joy to his community. But Karen had made this personal. She wasn't just attacking his decorations. She was attacking his memories, his traditions, his way of keeping his parents' spirit alive. He looked back at his house, the vibrant lights twinkling against the darkening sky. They were more than just decorations. They were a celebration of love, joy, and family. And he wasn't about to let Karen extinguish that light, not without a fight. A steely resolve settled over him. If Karen wanted a war over Christmas, then that's exactly what she was going to get. And Daniel had no intention of backing down. Daniel spent the next week buried in HOA documents, his eyes straining as he pored over every line. The rules were infuriatingly vague, with phrases like aesthetic harmony and community standards that could mean just about anything. There were no specific limits on decorations, no numbers, no size restrictions. Just subjective guidelines that Karen could twist to her will. It was clear as day. The rules were written to give her power, not to maintain peace. Frustration simmered within him, but it was quickly replaced by determination. If Karen wanted a fight, he would give her one. He tried to reason with other board members, hoping to find someone with common sense, but every conversation ended in disappointment. They echoed Karen's words like puppets on strings, fearful of her influence. It was obvious she controlled the HOA with an iron fist, and no one dared to cross her. But Daniel wasn't like the others. He wouldn't back down. If Karen wanted to enforce aesthetic harmony, he would make his display the most harmonious and extravagant in Willow Creek history. If she was going to hide behind vague rules, he'd bend them as far as they could go. That weekend, Daniel went all out. He spent hours at the holiday store, his shopping cart overflowing with strings of sparkling lights, animated reindeer, a life-sized nativity scene, and the crown jewel, a 12-foot inflatable Santa Claus that waved and bellowed, "Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!" every 15 minutes. He bought a synchronized music system that played holiday classics, timed perfectly to the flashing lights. It was a symphony of colors, sounds, and joy. Setting it all up was no small feat. For hours, he meticulously arranged each piece, making sure every light, every ornament, every animatronic character was in perfect sync. His yard became a dazzling wonderland, a spectacle of holiday spirit that could be seen from the end of the block. Kids gathered, their faces glowing with excitement as the reindeer heads bobbed to the beat of Jingle Bell Rock. Neighbors stood in awe, some laughing, others shaking their heads in disbelief. It was bold, it was beautiful, and it was breathtaking. Daniel stood back, his heart swelling with pride. He had outdone himself. This wasn't just a display, it was a celebration, a defiant act of joy in the face of Karen's tyranny. He watched as families gathered, taking photos and laughing together. It was everything Christmas was meant to be: love, laughter, and light. But then, like a dark cloud on a bright winter day, Karen appeared. She marched across the street, her face flushed with fury, eyes blazing with outrage. "This is outrageous, Daniel. You've doubled the decorations. You're mocking the HOA." Daniel crossed his arms, a smug grin playing on his lips. "I checked the rules. There's nothing about quantity, just harmony. And this," he gestured proudly at the synchronized lights flashing to the beat, "is perfectly harmonious. Every piece matches." Her jaw tightened, her voice cold as ice. "You think you're clever, don't you? This isn't over. You'll regret this." She spun on her heel, her footsteps echoing down the street as she stormed away. The next morning, another letter awaited him. This time, the fine was for noise disturbance and unauthorized public display. The penalty? $1,000. Karen was escalating, using every trick in the book to crush his spirit. But Daniel only felt more determined. She wanted a war? She was going to get one. Because this wasn't just about Christmas lights anymore. It was about standing up to a bully, about fighting for joy, for tradition, and for the right to celebrate. Daniel wasn't just defending his decorations. He was defending Christmas itself. And he had no intention of losing. Word spread quickly through Maple Lane. Daniel's dazzling Christmas display had become the talk of the neighborhood, and opinions were fiercely divided. Some residents adored the spectacle, praising Daniel for bringing holiday cheer to their quiet street. Parents thanked him for giving their kids a magical experience, and donations began pouring in for his Christmas Defense Fund. Neighbors dropped off envelopes with supportive notes, some even offering to testify on his behalf. To them, Daniel was a hero standing up to the Grinch-like authority of the HOA. But others, fearful of Karen's wrath, grumbled about disrupted peace and lowered property values. They whispered about how the flashing lights and synchronized music attracted too much attention. Karen exploited this fear masterfully. She went door to door, her voice dripping with concern as she warned of falling home prices and increased traffic accidents. "I just want to protect our community's integrity," she cooed, spinning tales about Daniel's reckless behavior. Her words were poison, and they spread fast. The next day, Daniel found a petition taped to his door, demanding the immediate removal of his display. His heart sank as he read the list of signatures, some from neighbors he had known for years. It stung, but it also fueled his determination. If Karen was going to fight dirty, he'd fight smarter. He wasn't alone. Daniel found unexpected allies in Sam and Linda Peterson, a retired couple who had lived on Maple Lane for over 30 years. They invited him over for coffee, their cozy living room filled with the scent of cinnamon and nostalgia. "This HOA has been out of control since Karen took over," Linda whispered, her eyes flashing with anger. "She fined us last year for our garden gnomes, said they were tacky." Sam shook his head, his voice steady and resolved. "She thinks she can control everyone. But you stood up to her, and we're standing with you." Together, they organized a counter-petition, going door to door with stories of how Karen had bullied and fined others for trivial offenses. They spoke about community, joy, and tradition, values that Daniel's display celebrated. To his surprise, many neighbors opened up about their own frustrations with Karen's authoritarian rule. People were tired of her iron grip, tired of living in fear of her fines and rules. But Karen didn't back down. Realizing she was losing her narrative, she escalated her tactics. She filed a lawsuit, claiming Daniel's display was a public nuisance, citing noise complaints and traffic hazards. It was a calculated move, designed to intimidate him and drain his resources. But Daniel was ready. With the Petersons' help, he gathered testimonies from neighbors who loved his display, countering every one of Karen's claims. Then, Daniel found the silver bullet. Buried deep in the HOA bylaws was a clause about community events. Gatherings or displays meant to foster community spirit were exempt from HOA regulations. And if his Christmas Wonderland wasn't a community event, then nothing was. Word of the legal battle spread beyond Maple Lane. Local news stations picked up the story, framing it as a David versus Goliath tale of holiday spirit versus HOA tyranny. Karen's carefully constructed narrative began to crumble under public scrutiny. The spotlight was on her, and people started questioning why she was so determined to destroy something that brought so much joy. As public support swelled, Daniel realized this was bigger than just Christmas lights. It was about standing up to a bully, about protecting tradition, joy, and freedom. And for the first time since the battle began, Daniel knew he was going to win. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Neighbors, reporters, and children who loved Daniel's Christmas display filled every seat. Karen sat confidently, her smug smile suggesting she'd already won. Daniel stood beside his attorney, his heart pounding. This wasn't just about decorations. It was about community, tradition, and standing up to Karen's iron-fisted rule. Karen's lawyer began aggressively, painting Daniel as a reckless troublemaker disrupting the neighborhood's peace. She claimed his display caused noise, traffic issues, and damaged property values. Karen's smile grew with each accusation, clearly enjoying Daniel's discomfort. But Daniel stood firm, his resolve unshaken. He knew his display wasn't a nuisance. It was a symbol of holiday joy. When it was Daniel's turn, his lawyer presented the counterpetition, revealing signatures from neighbors who loved the display. Photos were shown of families laughing, children in awe, and couples reminiscing about Christmases past. It was undeniable. Daniel's display brought joy and unity to the neighborhood. Then Sam Peterson took the stand. He spoke passionately about how Daniel's display wasn't just about lights, but about bringing the community together. "It's tradition," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's who we are as neighbors." Karen's confidence visibly faltered, her face flushing as the courtroom murmured in agreement. But the knockout punch came when Daniel's lawyer exposed the HOA's own rules. Willow Creek's bylaws allow for community events exempt from HOA regulations, he argued. Daniel's display is a public gathering that fosters neighborhood spirit, exactly what the bylaws protect. The judge's eyebrows lifted in surprise as he flipped through the rule book, his expression shifting to one of realization. The courtroom fell silent as the judge spoke. Mr. Thompson's display indeed qualifies as a community event and is therefore exempt from HOA interference. He looked directly at Karen, his voice firm. Your personal bias has no place in enforcing these rules. The lawsuit is dismissed, and all fines are rescinded. Karen's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing in shock. She had lost. Her authority shattered. Cheers erupted as neighbors embraced Daniel, thanking him for defending not just his rights, but the spirit of Christmas. Even those who once sided with Karen admitted they were wrong. Karen stood frozen, humiliated and powerless. That night, Daniel's display shone brighter than ever. Lights danced to festive music, Santa's deep laugh echoed, and families gathered in celebration. Daniel looked at his yard, filled with joy and laughter, his heart swelling with pride. He glanced across the street at Karen's dark, silent house, a small smile playing on his lips. Christmas was saved, and Karen's reign was over.